So the Atlanta Hawks are in a little bit of trouble as of right now. Of course, they are off to a very, very slow start. It has been a borderline disaster for the Atlanta Hawks so far this season. I'm going to get really, really further into it, talking about some key players, key reasons, and a lot of statistics. But of course, before I get into this video, make sure to like and subscribe, turn that notification bell. You guys help me out a little bit. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. Now, going into a sort of overview for the season, the Atlanta Hawks are 4-8 on the year. They are 13th in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to get into some notable players right now. Trae Young is averaging 24 points and 9 assists, which is pretty solid for Trae Young. You will wish he averaged more points, but I think that's going to come with him adapting to the new foul rules, something I'm going to get into a little bit later. John Collins averaging 15-8, solid season. Cam Reddish, a guy who really has burst onto the scene this year, is averaging 12 points off the bench. Clint Capella, who's having sort of a down season compared to last season, but he is averaging 10 points and 11 rebounds, which is more than solid for a player like Clint Capella. And of course, another young core piece for the Atlanta Hawks, DeAndre Hunter, averaging a very, very, very respectable 11 points per game. Now, going on to the team offense that has really stayed the same. There's one stat that will stand out later. However, the Atlanta Hawks average 107 points per game. They average 45% from the field per game, 23 assists per game, and 18 free throws attempted per game. Now, why is this last stat of 18 free throws attempted important? Well, as you guys know, the new foul rule for the NBA was put into place during the offseason. Let's just say the Atlanta Hawks went from 4th in the NBA and free throws attempted all the way down to 21st. 21st in free throws attempted. That is a huge, huge margin of difference, and that's going to play a huge role in Atlanta's offense and them being a little bit sluggish to start off the season. They're not really getting some of the calls that they got last year, which I'm not going to complain about. I'm not going to critique. However, the new rule is definitely in effect right here, and I'm going to definitely give you some insight on that new rule later in this video. Now, of course, going on to team defense, the Atlanta Hawks, they've actually been really, really good when concerning team defense. I mean, they only allow 111.4 points per game, which is 12th in the league as of right now. They allow 46% from the field, which is 12th in the league. They do snag 45 rebounds a game, which is really, really impressive. Top 5 in the league. Really impressive considering the Atlanta Hawks are a relatively small team compared to the bigger leaders up there. Of course, they do allow teams to get 42 rebounds per game, which is 8th in the league, which is still pretty good. This defense has gotten better this season. The Atlanta Hawks defense has been really, really respectable concerning this year. Last year, defense was a little bit of a problem. It wasn't really the strong suit for the Atlanta Hawks. However, I feel like the Hawks right now have found out to, let's just say, cover Trae's weakness on defense. They no longer put Trae on the best player. They no longer do it the whole game. And I really think the Atlanta Hawks defense has gotten a lot better as a result of Nick McMillan's coaching. And of course, Trae Young getting a little bit better on defense. Although he's not the biggest guy, he can slip into the cracks, get some steals every once in a while. I really think the Atlanta Hawks are playing solid defense this year. Now, you're going to see these stats. You would see these stats and be like, hey, Micah, what exactly is the problem? Well, do I have a problem for you? Number one problem, no foul calls. The new NBA rule states the following. The new rule, it's basically changing the rule and it's kind of discouraging players from doing weird things to initiate contact, basically. Players from jumping into other players to initiate contact. Those are no longer called fouls. However, this rule, I feel like it's really confused officials on what a foul is and what a foul is not. This rule has made it 10 times harder for players to score. And to prove it, I'm going to give you 2 very specific scorers that have obviously complained about this rule in the last couple of days. 2 guys who average well over 30 points per game if they wanted to. However, the new rule has really hindered their scoring. That first guy, Damian Lillard, only averaging 19 points per game this year. It's really, really tough out there for Damian Lillard. They actually came out and said that the officiating had basically been a little bit ridiculous. He does not agree with the new officiating at all, and I can say that I don't quite agree with it either. However, I'm not going to complain about it, but the NBA players right here, they're not agreeing with it. Going to the next guy, James Harden, a guy who's seemingly infamous for getting some of those cheap fouls. However, he's averaging 18 points per game, and we all know how much those fouls do get on our nerves. We know that as NBA fans, those fouls are not quite optimal. But James Harden and Damian Lillard averaging 20 points per game is a clear indication that there's something wrong going on. Come on. We're talking about 2 of the best scorers in quite possibly league history averaging under 20 points per game. That's That's ridiculous. And going off of the players, we really need to go into the entire league. The entire league is averaging less points than it did in the last 3 years. Also, the league is shooting a lower percentage than it's had in the last 8 years. And then this league has the lowest free throw attempts per game so far this season since the statistic, was first recorded in the year of 1946. People, that is 75 years. Let me reiterate that to you again. The NBA is averaging the least amount of free throw attempts per game. This is the entire league, by the way. The least amount of free throw attempts per game in its 75-year history this year. The age of offense, the age of the fast pace, the age of the 7 seconds or less. This age right now is averaging less free throw attempts per game than any other year in the NBA's history. That is absolutely insane. Now, some notable players to give their take / complain. James Harden, he has not liked the rule. He kind of feels like he's the poster boy of this rule. He feels like he's getting targeted by the referees, and can you really blame him? I mean, the dude literally got bear hugged one game. There was no call. Damian Lillard, he came out just recently, actually, and said that he basically said the referees were bogus. He said that the referees are not calling great calls. He thinks the officiating is straight out terrible. Trae Young also came out and gave his take on the rules. Stephen Curry also said that the rule is going to make offense, and has made offense, a lot harder. Now, the number 2 problem for the Atlanta Hawks, they are allowing more than they produce. Yes, Atlanta's scoring a very, very respectable 107 points per game, but they're allowing 111 points per game. Atlanta also shoots a very, very respectable 45%, but they're allowing 46 to 47%. The thing is, the Atlanta Hawks they're doing really, really good. They are doing really well on the offensive side of the ball, but the defensive side of the ball, they're allowing maybe a little bit too much. The defense is actually in the top rankings, and the Atlanta Hawks are allowing still a little bit too much a little bit too much offense for the opposing team. So I would argue that the offense just has to get a little bit better. I mean, your defense for the Atlanta Hawks can only get so good. It can only go so high, and their defense has rapidly improved this year. I think the Atlanta Hawks offense mainly needs to improve, and that's going to come with really adapting to the new rules. I know free throw shooting is probably not going to be as ridiculous for the entire year. They're probably going to take the rules up a little bit. I think the Atlanta Hawks should be in really, really good care. I think they should be in really good favor. This is a very slow start. However, you got the new rules. You got some very, very tough teams on the schedule. You have some easier games coming up for the Atlanta Hawks, so I think they're going to be really good. However, they are allowing more than they produce at this point, and that's one reason why the Atlanta Hawks are mad struggling to start off the gates of the season. Then, of course, number 3, you have players are not producing the same way they did last season. Yes, there are players that are doing worse in the league as of right now. However, for the Atlanta Hawks, it's multiple players. Trae Young is averaging less points, he's shooting worse, and averages less rebounds and assists than he did last year. Clint Capella is averaging 5 less points and 3 less rebounds than he did last year. Lou Williams is averaging 5 less points and 2 less assists and shooting 27% this year. Kevin Huerter is averaging 2 less points and assists than he did last year, and John Collins is averaging 2 less points. Yeah, that's a lot of production lost. When that all adds up, those are like some of your best players on the team. I mean, you could argue that Trae Young, John Collins, and Clint Capella are the 3 best players on the team, and all of their averages have gone significantly down this year, and that's a lot of lost production. And that's not even considering that some people on the bench, such as Danilo Gallinari, are only averaging 7 points per game this season. So the Atlanta Hawks have not quite gotten the necessary fuel out of their stars that they got last season. Now, is it time to panic on the Atlanta Hawks? Absolutely not. The Hawks just need to get better, and they need to adjust. Now, of course, here's some 5 things that I think the Atlanta Hawks need to do. Number 1, they need to adjust to the new game. Let's face it, the foul rule does not look like it's going to change. I think the Atlanta Hawks have to become a more physical team. They're definitely going to have to get used to not being able to draw some of those cheap fouls, and I think it's going to come with just playing a little bit more and adjusting to the new game. Then, of course, number 2, I think they need to get their key players back into action and back into rhythm. Again, this is going to come with playing. Trae Young started off the season ice cold. However, the last 2 games, he's done really, really good. I want to say he dropped 30 points on the Warriors, and on the previous game, dropped like 27, something like that. And then on the Suns, dropped about 27, 28, 30. So Trae Young is still getting back into action. Of course, you need to get the bench going, but I believe Lou Williams and Danilo Gallinari and the rest of that bench I believe they're going to come along as the season comes around and as the season progresses. That's what the older guys tend to do. They start off a little bit cold. However, they go into the season progresses and progresses, and they get better and better. Number 3, the Atlanta Hawks have to crash the boards. Now, this is a very tough analysis to make because the Atlanta Hawks are already one of the best rebounding teams in the league. However, they need to do it more. Clint Capella is averaging a little bit less rebounds. Of course, John Collins, we know he could average 10 rebounds in the season. He's done it before. You need those guys to really crash the boards. I know you don't have many other guys that can crash the boards, and the Atlanta Hawks might want to go and get another center. I know Gorgie Jang is a guy that can definitely crash the glass. However, I think the Atlanta Hawks bigs need to play a little bit more aggressive. They need to go and get the ball. They need to crash the glass. They need to go get the boards. And that's basically what I think they need to do. I think the Atlanta Hawks definitely need to use their size advantage on the inside with players like Clint Capella and John Collins, especially on smaller teams, to go and snag some easy rebounds. Number 4 is getting into the paint. Trae Young is shooting a little bit low from 3 this year. It's like 33% as of right now. It's a little bit low. It definitely can be better. However, I think the Atlanta Hawks need to focus their game more on the inside. The Atlanta Hawks, they can become very, very reliant on shooting the ball. And while that is a good thing when they're going in, when they're not going in, what do you go to? The Atlanta Hawks are going to have to go inside more. They're going to have to drive to the basket. They're going to have to take that contact. Again, this goes more into the first point with adjusting to the new game. However, I believe the Atlanta Hawks, since they have Trae Young, a guy who's a threat with that floater. They also have John Collins, who can be a lob threat, a post threat, or even step back from the mid-range. And then, of course, you have Clint Capella, who can pretty much score from anywhere inside the paint. I believe the Atlanta Hawks need to get into that paint more and use that to their advantage, and then use that game, that paint game, that inside-out game to stretch out and then hit those easy threes. Then number 5, they need to play better defense. As I said earlier, the Atlanta Hawks are simply allowing more than they're producing. This is, again, another tough ask because the Atlanta Hawks, they do have one of the better defenses in the league, and the defense has rapidly improved compared to last year. However, if you are allowing 111 points per game, it's not really the greatest thing ever. Like, I know that it's high in the rankings. I know that it's high in the rankings this year. However, you want to keep that down in like the 109-ish range. You don't want to get over 110, so I believe the defense needs to improve. I know Clint Capella is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate practically every single season. I know that John Collins can play defense. Now, the Atlanta Hawks, when it comes to the guards, they do have sort of a liability, but of course you have DeLon Wright, who can come off the bench and play defense. Trae Young's getting better at playing defense. So I think playing defense is going to be a huge, huge key when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks winning more games. But, of course, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you for watching. I need to reiterate this. It's not time to panic on the Atlanta Hawks, man. It's barely been 12, 13 games, something like that. It's not time to panic. This is just a wake-up call for them, to say the least. This is just what the Atlanta Hawks need to do to get better. Think of this video as something like that. However, of course, links in the description. TikTok, Spotify, Instagram. You guys follow those if you want to. Even if you don't want to, even if you don't follow, I still wish that you have a happy and blessed day and you stay loved and stay blessed. And without further ado, I'm going to end this video. Thank you for watching.
Funky man that lack finesse. Wanna be rappers brag about already being the best. I respect many people for the job they've done. Haters full of jealousy is what I like especially. I like a lot of funky man that lack finesse.